For centuries, Niccolò Machiavelli has been labeled a champion of manipulation and cold-blooded strategy. He's the one who wrote, "People should either be caressed or crushed. If you do them minor damage, they will get their revenge. But if you cripple them, there is nothing they can do." Such words sound disturbingly ruthless to anyone who believes in empathy above all. But beneath this blunt statement lies a deeper wisdom. If you've ever found your goodwill exploited, Machiavelli's blunt observations can shed light on why kindness so often becomes a trap and how you can avoid falling into it. Far from rejecting compassion entirely, his perspective teaches us how to protect your kindness in a world that often rewards cruelty over morality. Kindness naturally draws people in, easing tensions and creating supportive connections. Still, it's a trait that can backfire if not guided by awareness. Some individuals will see open-heartedness as an opportunity to shift burdens onto you or manipulate circumstances to their advantage. When that happens, the one who initially aimed to help often ends up feeling depleted or betrayed. Machiavelli understood that people, by nature, prioritize their own interests. He was not rejecting compassion. Rather, he insisted that people should understand the reasons behind others' actions. If you give indefinitely without checking for mutual give and take or respect, you risk falling into a cycle where your kindness is taken for granted. That doesn't mean you should abandon generosity. It just means you should approach it with a sense of awareness. Not everyone will value your goodwill the way you intended. This tension is easy to spot in everyday life. A favor, once appreciated, can quickly become an expectation. What once felt like generosity turns into obligation. This shift can create bitterness and strain the relationship. Recognizing this double-edged nature of generosity is the first step toward maintaining your kindness without losing yourself. People who value harmony often struggle with saying no. They dislike conflict and fear that setting boundaries will make them appear cold or unkind. Yet the irony is that constantly adjusting for others can lead to more conflict. Internally, you become exhausted, unappreciated, and, over time, resentful. Machiavelli's perspective on power reminds us that everyone has an agenda, whether they realize it or not. That doesn't mean the world is full of manipulators. It simply means people prioritize their needs. If you're always available, always saying yes, others assume you're willing to handle more than your fair share. This trap often grows from the simple desire to be liked. Many caring souls believe that by being too agreeable, they'll earn respect. But respect doesn't always follow. Instead, your generosity becomes a resource others expect rather than something they appreciate. Over time, you might sense the imbalance but hesitate to act, afraid of breaking the peace. But Machiavelli's wisdom suggests that real harmony isn't about blind submission. Sometimes maintaining peace requires standing firm, knowing when to say no, and reassert your boundaries. That's not cruelty. It's self-preservation that ensures your kindness remains a strength, not a weakness. Machiavelli is often remembered for asking whether it's better to be feared or loved. But that question, if taken too literally, is misleading. He never advocated for a single approach. He urged a blend, shaped by the circumstances. Remove the historical context, and his message applies to everyday life. Seek respect, not blind affection or fear. Keep your heart open, but don't be clueless about how people behave. At its core, Machiavelli's advice is about being realistic. He encouraged leaders to be merciful and fair, but also strong enough to stop problems before they start. Applied to personal relationships, this means you can be generous while making it clear you're not an endless supply of favors. Let your kindness shine, but ensure others see you as someone who protects their own interests too. If people perceive you as spineless, opportunists will take advantage. If you appear too guarded, you may alienate those who sincerely value you. The goal isn't to manipulate people, it's to stand firm in a middle ground. Machiavelli's perspective suggests a smarter approach. Read your environment, observe behavior, and adjust as needed. If you see that someone never returns your kindness, it might be time to adjust your level of commitment. That's not betrayal, it's a necessary response to reality. One of the hardest things for caring people is learning to say no. Guilt often disrupts their attempts, making them worry they're betraying their identity. But Machiavelli's practical realism reveals a deeper truth. Boundaries aren't betrayals. They're the foundation of stability. Without clear limits, disorder takes over, whether in a kingdom or in your own life. Boundaries protect your emotional energy. Always saying yes leads to burnout and resentment, which ultimately damages relationships. Setting limits shows self-awareness and ensures that when you choose to help, it's intentional and sustainable, not forced. The key to doing this without guilt is to see that boundaries show respect for both sides. By explaining what you can and cannot do, you let others know where you stand. This openness helps avoid confusion or pent-up anger. You don't need to be rude. A polite, straightforward response is often enough. I'd love to help, but I can't do that right now. I have other things I must handle first. That single statement draws a line and reminds the other person you have responsibilities beyond their request. Some people won't accept your limits. They might push back, complain, or accuse you of changing. But in reality, you're simply becoming more assertive, an improvement Machiavelli would see as good. Let them adjust to the new dynamic. Those who value you will respect your clarity. Those who resist may only have valued your endless favors. Machiavelli insisted on understanding human nature and acting wisely based on that knowledge. You can apply the same mindset in your life by building a personal code that blends kindness with self-protection. This code, rooted in honesty, respect, and self-awareness, becomes your guide in moments when your generosity is tested. Start by defining your core values. Maybe loyalty, caring, and fairness are at the top of your list, but also acknowledge how far you're willing to go before it starts costing your well-being. You might decide to help a friend in crisis, but not at the expense of your own stability. The more clearly you define these guidelines, the easier it becomes to recognize when someone is pushing your limits. Machiavelli also emphasized the power of perception. If your behavior is inconsistent, eager to help one day but resentful the next, others will receive mixed signals, leading to misunderstandings and more demands. A clear, consistent approach prevents this. People learn what to expect, and you remain in control. Over time, this approach transforms your kindness into something deliberate and powerful, rather than something others exploit. You still contribute to others' well-being, but not at the expense of your own. And Machiavelli would argue that this balance of compassion and self-awareness is what creates not just connection, but real respect. For many, the idea that kindness can be a trap feels unsettling. But Machiavelli's practical insights reveal that warmth and wisdom don't have to conflict. If you recognize both the generosity and the self-interest in the world around you, you can stay compassionate without becoming a victim of it. Instead of abandoning your kindness, refine it. Trust your instincts when demands feel disproportionate. Communicate your boundaries without apology. When you do, you ensure that your goodwill remains a source of strength rather than a hidden weakness.
This is a ValueVinci original.